Yeah, this, yeah, no, this is it, yeah. I'll do the same. I need this. Okay.
Started.
I gotta get some of these pictures.
Please do. Can you take your seats, please? All right, thank you. So I would like to first of all introduce Mr. Ray Natraoro. We are gathering here on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. So I'd like to invite Ray of the Squamish Nation to provide a welcome. Ray.
Thank you. Usiam siait, Tanoyap, Erjuan Sequetals, Yuan Hat, Squalawans, Tisqual Titsits, Sisiam, Quishamans Nas, Neta Ans, Hopmish Ol Stalmuch, Yuan Hat, Squalawans, Quis Tlak Noma, Ati, Quis Quachnuch, Tanoyap, Shade Stalmuch, Tisqual Titsits. First of all, just thank you for the introduction. I am from the Squamish Nation. I'm located across the water here. I'm one of the nation members of the Coast Salish people. I wanted to welcome you all here in the territory of the Squamish people, the Squamish people, the shared territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people. Thank you for all coming here today from near and far to this wonderful territory, this beautiful country here of the mountains and the ocean. I'm very honored to be here to represent my people, to welcome you all here, to participate in this conference. As Squamish people, we've always been here. We strive to find value and create opportunities to build relationships, to work in collaboration with all stakeholders. We are participating in projects in our territory. We had numerous water hydro projects with BC Hydro, Fortis Gas, and coming up with LNG coming up here in our territory. So welcome you all here to our territory. OCM, CI, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. And good morning again, and welcome everyone to the first Global Grid Forum. So on behalf of EEI and the forum host organizations, I certainly would like to welcome everyone here. To do these kinds of events, obviously you want to, you need the support of your sponsors. And so I would like to recognize our sponsors and ask you, after I've mentioned their names, to give them an applaud and thank them for their support. The sponsors for this event are Navigant and Smart Wires. So there will be translation between Chinese and English during the session, so you have headsets at your seats which are available. Putting this together, obviously, it's besides the sponsors, it's all the work behind the scenes, and we certainly have done this in collaboration with group of organizations, and I want to recognize them. And wait until I've read the names, and we can also recognize them with an applaud. So the Association of Power Utilities of Africa, BC Hydro, our utility host, the Canadian Electricity Association, Caribbean Electric Utility Services Corporation, Global Energy Interconnection Development and Corporation Organization, and Renewable Cities, as well as the Simon Fraser University. So, and we also would like to, as you can imagine, such a big, I think we're about 170 people in this room today who've registered and come from about 17 different countries, travel. I think our friend Malelo from Terna has probably traveled the furthest because he came from Bolivia and he went through, like, I don't know how many flights to get here on time. But people have come from afar for this event. And behind the scenes, there are a lot of people who made this work. And I will get into trouble. I've learned from Tom, don't start calling names because you will forget somebody. So I'd like to ask everyone in this audience who was part of the organizing committee to please stand. And if you're outside, come in and please stand, and we'll recognize all. I'm not calling any names, so if you're part of the organization, please stand. Thank you. Just a couple other things briefly here. So we're gathered this morning to have these next 1.5 days to have this conversation about transmission. We know that around the globe, power systems are going to transformation. We understand that key to this is understanding technology, policy, as well as regulation. No doubt, transmission is going to play a major role in the future of the global energy systems, and which is why we're very happy today to have perspective views that will be brought to the table. The intent for this dialogue, and I call it dialogue, is not to sort of opine on what we already know, but to really bring together ideas that will sort of move the needle. We have a series of reports here. There's a report that's the GEICO report, the report from EER on the value of transmission. There's a report here from Concentric. But those are just a few. I'm sure during the course of the next 2 days, a lot of other ideas will be brought to fore in terms of what's been done around the globe, from the Caribbean to Africa, Asia, Europe, North America. So we've tried to really bring together a very good cross-section of activities around the world, because like someone once said, no one utility, no one country has a solution to electrifying the globe. And the idea is to get different perspectives to be brought to bear here over the next 2 days. So the last point I will make in terms of setting the scene is to keep in mind that the moderators during this event are very, very, very strong in terms of making us stay on target, and be prepared because they are coming very fired up to challenge you with questions, but also to make sure that we stay on time and we stay on track, because we have a lot to cover. There is a public forum, so you obviously can engage with us on Twitter. Hashtag 2019GGF is the information. And so with that, I would like to invite and introduce Mr. Francis Bradley, who is the CEO of the Canadian Electricity Association. Francis, the floor is yours.
Bon, ben merci beaucoup. Je suis Francis Bradley, je suis le PDG de l'Association canadienne de l'électricité. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Vancouver. I'm delighted to be here at the inaugural Global Grid Forum. Hopefully, this is going to be the first of many. My name is Francis Bradley. I'm the President and CEO of the Canadian Electricity Association. For those unfamiliar with CEA, we're the national voice of electricity in Canada. Our members generate, transmit, distribute electricity to industrial, commercial, residential customers from coast to coast to coast. Our members are in all 10 provinces and all 3 territories of Canada. I want to pause here, though, and mention that one of our members is not going to be present today because they are still fighting the effects of the recent hurricane, Dorian. Things are looking certainly better on the East Coast right now than they did on the weekend. But at last count, I just checked that there's still 97,000 customers that are impacted in Nova Scotia. I'm pleased to be joined today by members of CEA's Transmission Council. several colleagues from CEA, including Michael Powell, who is our Director of Government Relations, Justin Cruson, who was one of the people that had been working diligently on this conference. He is our Director of Distribution and Transmission. Alex Kent from the team is also here. He's our Transmission Distribution Policy Advisor. Alex, I think you're also going to be running the Slido system a little bit later, and that'll be explained when we get around to the coffee break. But you'll see that's going to be part of the experience over the next day and a half. So today's session will serve as a good reminder that we share responsibility in ensuring that our electricity system is reliable, resilient, safe, and for the benefit of our customers. And while the conversation is based in North America today, I'm pleased to welcome, as noted by Lawrence, delegates from Asia, from Africa, from Europe. We have much to learn from our partners around the world. We as leaders in the industry have an important responsibility. We know that the North American integrated electricity system is critical to the highly positive and mutually beneficial North American energy relationship and to prosperity at large. CEA's 38 members, both national and international, recognize the importance of their cross-border ties, and they continue to develop relationships around the world. Everyone in this room knows that the electricity business is rapidly evolving, and it's on the cusp of massive change. This change, like the electrons and the electricity infrastructure we share, the change is borderless in nature. From new technologies, new generation mixes, to evolving physical and cyber threats, to new customer and policy demands, now more than ever, we need to work together to address challenges that no one should face alone. We'll touch on a number of themes during this forum, and I'm sure electrification will play an important role in the conversation. Electrification will be integral to a global clean growth future and the necessary emissions reductions needed to face climate change. A recent North American assessment by the Electric Power Research Institute identified electrification as potentially increasing electrical load in the U.S. by 24 to 52% by 2050. And Shell Energy's Sky scenario predicts that by 2070, the rate of electrification around the world will more than triple, with global electricity generation reaching a nearly 5 times today's level. These changes will strain current infrastructure and delivery design, making it crucial that electricity companies around the world invest in and upgrade their facilities. And I know I'm preaching to the converted when I emphasize the importance of transporting clean energy from where it's produced to where it's consumed. My colleagues from CEA recently attended the Clean Energy Ministerial here in Vancouver, and they met delegates from around the world who were awestruck by Canada's hydroelectricity. Simply put, Canadians cannot take our clean energy for granted. As these issues are unique to no one country, this conference is intended to provide a forum to discuss our shared challenges and, more importantly, opportunities. Let's take advantage of the time we have together to further the dialogue in an international context. I want to thank our counterparts from the Edison Electric Institute for organizing, to Simon Fraser University's Renewable Cities for providing this amazing space. I must say, when I walked in this morning, for a moment I thought I was at the United Nations in New York City, not Vancouver. This is a beautiful facility. Thank you to Simon Fraser University. To our member company, BC Hydro, for hosting us here in Vancouver. The APUA, the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization, and Carolec for partnering with us and creating the opportunity to discuss the future of transmission in North America and around the world. So I'd like to turn things back to my friend Lawrence Jones from the Edison Electric Institute. Back to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Francis. Okay, so without further ado, Francis did say our host organization is BC Hydro, and so I'm very delighted to invite Maureen Daschuk to give us her remarks. Please welcome Maureen.
Good morning. And thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to British Columbia and to BC Hydro. This is an incredibly exciting time for the electricity sector in BC. We're experiencing a lot of global change, and it's influenced by a number of factors, including climate change, electrification, and regulation. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how those topics have been playing out at BC Hydro. As the person responsible for planning within BC Hydro, like many of you, it's my responsibility to ensure that we are adapting for the future. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about BC Hydro. We are an integrated utility, meaning we have generation, transmission, and distribution. We're also a crown corporation, meaning that we're owned by the government of British Columbia and all of the people who live in British Columbia. We have two wholly owned subsidiaries, PowerX, which is our trading organization, and PowerTech Labs, which is a global research and development organization, and I believe you've been invited to some tours over the next couple of days to visit those two facilities. We've got 4 million customers, and we serve 95% of the population of British Columbia. Most of our generation is from hydro. We have 30 hydroelectric plants and 2 gas-fired plants. With 79,000 kilometers of transmission and distribution lines, we have a lot of very challenging terrain to cover. 98% of the power that we generate is clean, which I know puts us in a very enviable position relative to a number of other organizations. We also exist in a unique part of the world, which makes it a great place to host a forum like this. I would like to show you a short video that shows one of our most recent transmission projects. There we go, okay. About 2/3 of British Columbia is forested, and 75% of the land is mountainous. And the majority of our generation is located in the north and southern interior of BC, which is very far away from the high demand centers in the south. So to meet this demand, we completed a major project in 2015 to help bring power from the central regions of the province to the 3.2 million people in the south. This was the first major upgrade to our transmission system in 30 years. This project involved building 247 kilometers of transmission system, or of transmission 500 kilovolt line with more than 600 steel transmission towers, navigating through 6 distinct climate zones and geographic regions. We worked closely with First Nations, and our relationship with them is critical to our success. The new lines pass through territories, communities, and areas of cultural interest for many First Nations. They also pass through numerous environmentally sensitive areas such as wetlands and bogs. And we often need to study wildlife, natural habitat, and archaeology as we develop plans for our projects so that we can mitigate the impacts. In total, this project took 4 years for us to complete. I'd like to talk a little bit about how BC Hydro is dealing with decarbonization and electrification. Certainly it is a global issue, and we want to create a sense of urgency. Like many of the countries, we have in Canada signed the Paris Agreement in 2016 and have made an effort to reduce the harmful impacts of global warming. Provincially, our government of BC created a new climate action plan called Clean BC to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by switching from fossil fuels to lower carbon intensity products. Under this plan, by 2040, every new car sold in British Columbia will be a zero-emission vehicle. And by 2032, every new building will be a net zero energy. LNG Canada is one of our newest customers. Electrification of the liquefied natural gas processing plants in the northwest part of our province will help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by enabling our industrial customers to switch their fuel from oil and gas to using electricity to run their operations. The governments of British Columbia and Canada have shared interest in electrifying the oil and gas industry, and they have a desire to have the energy produced in British Columbia to be the cleanest in the world. But we also know that being able to do that requires us to build reliable and affordable access to industries wishing to electrify. To that end, the Government of Canada and the Government of BC recently announced that they would be a joint memorandum of understanding to fund 3 projects that will help build transmission services from our generation source to the LNG and upstream oil and gas. Another project that we're working on is called the Peace Region Electrical Supply, and this is where we're building two parallel 230-volt kilovolt power lines between our new substation to provide electricity to the upstream oil and gas sector. Once this line is completed, it will eliminate 2.6 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year, or the equivalent of taking 550,000 cars off of the road for 1 year. Other examples of innovation around electrification is evident right here in the city of Vancouver, where we have over 230 cruise ships that come into port every year. And now when those cruise ships dock here at Canada Place, they are able to plug into our electric system and don't have to run their engines to power the cruise ships while they're in dock in the terminal. We're also working to expand our capacity to handle transportation of buses. I hope many of you get a chance to ride on TransLink and on the SkyTrain, which is an electric vehicle, and it's a great asset for the city of Vancouver. Climate change is another area that we are very interested in, particularly about climate change adaptation. In 2017, BC had the worst season on record for wildfires. And last year wasn't much better. This year was actually a better year for us from wildfires. If you had been here a year ago, the skies would have been full of clouds or smog because of the amount of ash in the air. We had a situation last year where we had to remove 70 hazard trees in about 6 hours in order to avoid a spread of a wildfire. Also, last December, we had the worst storm in BC Hydro's history, with 750,000 people without power. And winds were in excess of 100 kilometers per hour, combined with heavy rain, and it destabilized our trees. We lost 86,000 meters of power lines, and this is not a unique situation, and we are expecting through our climate change adaptation strategy to work on building resilience into our transmission system. The last area I want to speak about is a regulation, and we are a regulated utility by the BC Utilities Commission, but there's more regulation than we have to deal with than working solely with our regulator. For example, we work with the Department of Environment, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, WorkSafe BC, and many other organizations that have placed restrictions or expectations around how BC Hydro operates. The failure of us to meet those regulations is extremely high. We also have a strong relationship as we're interconnected in the North American grid, and a requirement to ensure that we are managing the bulk electrical system from cyber attack and from physical damage. So in conclusion, I want to say that as an organization, I think it's essential that we develop the capabilities that we need to be resilient and to be ready for the future. We have to look differently at our load forecasts and consider what the impacts are going to be on our transmission systems. And while I can't predict the future, I can say that we are going to be prepared for it. The one thing that I do know is that change is coming, and I believe that the next 2 days we'll be able to work together to understand how each of our organizations are working together to understand change and to be able to adapt to it. Thank you for coming to British Columbia, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of days. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of things before I forget. For the translation, channel 1 is Chinese, channel 2 is English. So if you want to have that ready. So we're going to start our industry leadership dialogue. In your package, in the program, you see the bios of everyone. So we've asked the moderators and others to sort of not go through the whole bio, so you can read people's bio there. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce the moderator of the industry dialogue, Steve Mitnick, who's the editor-in-chief of the Public Utilities Fortnightly, and Steve will introduce the other members of the panel. So Steve, over to you.
There we go. Welcome. Welcome. My brilliant and charismatic friend, Lawrence Jones, often advises me that I need to get out. My job entails spending exciting days in Delaware, Indiana, Illinois, and that's our mission. And recently, through promptings from Lawrence and others, working with great joy with the utility regulators as well of the provinces and territories of Canada, Camput, the Natraoro, if you will, of Canada. So, but Lawrence tells me I need to get out, and so it's a special honor for me to be here with this room filled with distinguished leaders of our industry, particularly in high voltage transmission. Such an important goal for our industry to strengthen and build upon our grids. So welcome. I thank you for your service, and we have a tremendous panel ahead of us. First, we have Francis Bradley. We'll call him up again, or he will speak again. And I think of Francis. I think I ran into him this morning. I said, "You must be the Tom Kuhn of Canada," which is quite an honor. It's quite an honor. And now I hear from some of his members that he is indeed. So go ahead, Francis. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, yeah, it's me again. Well, I just finished talking a moment ago, but for this panel, I thought I'd start with just laying a bit of groundwork for folks that may not be quite as familiar with the situation here in Canada and sort of what our starting point is. We have an electricity system in Canada that is more than 80% non-emitting, taken as a whole across the country. So, you know, when we're involved in discussions about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the leaders of Canada, Mexico, and the United States a couple of years ago got together and talked about establishing a North American target of 50% electricity from non-renewable sources. Canada is there and has been there for a long time. We are just blessed with with those resources. So we're at a different point than a number of other jurisdictions. That doesn't mean that from a GHG reduction standpoint, Canada has been washing its hands of it and said we're clean already. We're not doing anything about it. In fact, the electricity sector has reduced GHG emissions more than any sector in Canada. We've reduced our GHG emissions 30% since 2005, and we're on track to continue with the similar reduction between now and 2030. So we're starting from a very clean electricity system, and we're moving further into a cleaner system. So as we talk about moving to greater electrification, we're talking from the standpoint of a system, an electricity system that is not entirely, but to a great extent has already decarbonized and is continuing to decarbonize. So it is a bit of a different discussion when speaking of decarbonization and electrification from a Canadian standpoint than in some other jurisdictions. Also, by way of context, I would note that there's some pretty significant Canadian leadership over my lifetime and my time here in the electricity sector. When I think of who some of the real leaders are in hydroelectric generation, for example, who are the people that are doing large, interesting, innovative things, and it is the BC Hydros of this world, and Hydro-Quebec and Manitoba Hydro. I mean, these companies have been and continue to develop and move forward with interesting and innovative projects. We also have seen in the other types of generation a lot of innovation here in Canada. The CANDO system was developed in Canada. And with respect to electricity generated from coal. In Canada, we had the first commercial carbon capture and storage facility in Saskatchewan at Boundary Dam. The first one in the world, it always amazes me. Where did innovation really spark and first take place globally with respect to carbon capture and storage where it went on full commercialization? Well, in Estevan, Saskatchewan, of all places. It doesn't sort of roll off the tongue quite the same as Cupertino, California, but it was in Estevan, Saskatchewan. So there's interesting places in Canada where we have seen innovation take place. And Estevan is one of those places. And with respect to transmission, there are some real leaders in transmission, electricity transmission in this country. Hydro-Quebec, when I began working at CEA, was and at the time doing things that nobody else was doing with high voltage transmission. But even today, we're seeing some pretty innovative transmission projects underwater, DC projects. In particular, Newfoundland and Labrador to Nova Scotia. So there's a great deal of innovation that's taking place, and that, by way of background, we're now, of course, entering a period of massive change in the electricity sector. We've all talked about it. We're moving to massive electrification. Electrification of transportation is coming, and so. We don't know exactly what that path is going to look like, but the one thing that we can all agree upon is the future is going to require a great deal more electricity, right? So the future, regardless of which scenario you believe will move forward, that scenario has electricity as the linchpin and the enabler of our future. So. What's the challenge? Well, the challenge is how do we get stuff built, and increasingly that is a concern of members of my association, because if you look at what that challenge will look like in for example, a 2050 timeframe. And some of the studies that have been done that talk about what the electricity system requirements are going to be by 2050, if we've been having trouble building some of our current projects, we're talking about a massive increase in terms of what the requirement will be for generation and for transmission to move that to markets. It is becoming increasingly complex to get things built. You know, sometimes the grid component, the transmission component is the easier piece. Sometimes it's the generation that's more difficult, but nonetheless, the challenge to getting things built is probably increasing, not decreasing. The regulatory environments within which we operate are increasingly challenging. We're also at the same time seeing changes in what I would call the electricity marketplace. The increasing competition in the electricity space is also taking place at the same time, and it's at a time where the regulatory frameworks for the sector have not caught up to the changes that are already facing us, much less the changes that will be taking place in the future. There's a lot of really smart people that have been working in this space, but nobody's yet figured out exactly how we're going to crack the nut. There's work being done in New York. EPRI's been doing work. There's people thinking about this in Europe. But how do you transition from the current structure that we have to the future that will be more competitive in a manner that doesn't break the system and in a manner that safeguards reliability for the customer and stability of our networks? So that is a challenge, and it's not a criticism of the regulators. It's a criticism or identification of the lack of actually having the proper frameworks thought through so that will be able to work in the future. And then added to that is how should I put it? We're also in a period of increasingly unstable political environments. And that is, I think, a challenge for our members. With political change, and we've seen significant political changes taking place here in Canada and in other jurisdictions where governments change, and as a result of changes in government, there's changes in policy, but energy policy, and that has a significant impact on this sector that is attempting to build assets that are supposed to last for generations in an environment when sometimes the political orientations change every 4 years. So, the challenge of being able to build assets that are intended to last for decades in an environment where, frankly, sometimes the political environment changes as quickly as a 140-character tweet just makes planning and implementing things very difficult. So how do you plan for that long term in this political environment? The short and medium term, maybe, but the long term is just very difficult. But clearly we have to, given the long-term challenges that we know that we're going to face as we move forward. So maybe I'll punt it back, Steve, and say, what we are going to need both within the industry and also from politicians, from regulators, and from all of the stakeholders is we're going to need vision and we're going to need leadership. And I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of the leaders within this industry. I think within the industry we have people that have the vision and the leadership to be able to meet the challenges of the future. What I'm more concerned about, though, is the other folks that we need to interact with. Are we going to have the political leaders? Are we going to have the leaders within communities that have the vision and the leadership so that we'll be able to meet those future challenges? Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. We're going to take a couple of questions, but I want to start this out. I bet in Canada, a very high percentage of carbon dioxide emissions are outside the electricity sector. How far can we go, how fast and how far in Canada to electrify transportation in the other sectors?
That's where we have to get to, right? The largest source of carbon emissions in this country, unlike the United States, where I believe it's still electricity generation, or that might have shifted. It's getting pretty close now. It hasn't been the case in Canada. It never has been the case in Canada, simply because we have such massive hydro resources in this country. It is transportation. Transportation is the biggest source of GHG emissions in this country, and so the speed with which we're able to move in that space is going to determine whether we're going to be successful over the medium to long term. Meaningful GHG reductions beyond what we have already been able to accomplish will only happen if we're able to move in a very significant way to electrify the transportation system in this country. But you know, it's a challenge in a number of areas. We do have a couple of governments, the federal government in some provinces are providing incentives for people to get into electric vehicles. Now that's nice, it sort of sparks the marketplace on the one hand. On the other hand, as a number of people have pointed out, including one of my members who's here today, who's able to take be able to take advantage of these incentives at this stage? Yes, 20 years from now, when electric vehicles will cost the same as an internal combustion engine, but who's really able to take advantage of these opportunities today? It's the same thing with respect to some of the newer technologies on distributed energy resources. Who can afford a Tesla Powerwall? Well, it's not your middle class family. And who can afford, a Tesla vehicle even with a federal incentive? Well, it's not the working poor and it's not the middle class either. So, there's that dynamic is taking place at the same time. But fundamentally, because transportation is such a large portion of GHG in this country, that's where we need to get to, and we need to get to there as quickly as possible.
Another question or two from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hello, morning everyone. Graham Steele. Maybe just a question to Francis with what he just raised. Clearly, a lot of countries are facing the same question that you just alluded to. What is the sort of view in Canada, and given particularly what Maureen said about what's happening in BC with the robustness of the transmission and distribution networks to be able to cope with the very challenge that you mentioned? Now, perhaps if we just park the difficulty of building question for 1 minute, but just in general, is there an agreed figure of the percentage of electrification you have to get to? Is it 100%? Is it 60%? What sort of challenge are you looking at in those sort of terms?
Yeah, that's an interesting question to which I don't think there's a definitive answer. I think probably if you're asking what's the view in Canada, you'd probably get 35 million different answers in terms of what that would likely look at. But fundamentally, I think what it comes down to would be, what is your view as if you're asking any individual, what's your view in terms of how much we need to overall reduce our GHGs? Because electrifying transportation is how we're going to do at least the next significant block. It's not going to get us to 80% GHG reductions, but the only way we can get to our 2030 targets is to do something in a very significant way with respect to, not 100%, but in a significant way with respect to transportation. And, while I, make cracks about, electric cars are for the rich today, the truth is, we need to actually spark that market so that, every year there are more vehicles available and then they become more affordable over time. So, yes, I think the criticism is valid at this point in time, but I think, as we move forward, there will be more vehicles that will be affordable, and we will be able to actually start chipping away in a significant manner. We don't have a lot of electric vehicles on the road just yet, but if you look at their growth over the last 5 years, it's been exponential. We've gone, from 10,000 to 20 to 40 to 80 to, and this year, I don't know how many they're going to be sold, but the growth so far has been exponential. In terms of how far it needs to go, how far do we think we need to actually reduce our GHG emissions? Do we want to hit the 2.5 degree target or not?
Our second speaker heads the Edison Electric Institute. You'll see on your name tags. It says EEI, Power by Association. Many of us in this room have watched how Tom transformed and made those words live by having utilities across the United States work as one and greatly increase the impact of our voices. Maybe that's a lesson for for our utilities across the globe. So Tom, please go next.
Steve, thank you, and for all you do to get the messages of the industry out to the public. I am the Francis Bradley of the United States. We often have events in Washington at the Canadian Embassy where Francis starts out, and I've got to follow him, and it's the same situation where he's said everything that could have been said and should have been said. So I'll just go ahead and say some additional things anyway. I want to first thank Maureen for starting us off with, I think, the picture of and the vision of what we're doing here. You know, sometimes I ride down beautiful roads like the Pacific Highway and with my family, and I point out to the vistas out there and say, isn't that beautiful? And they think, you know, we're talking about the mountains or the lakes, and I say, no, it's the transmission lines. And we all know it's the transmission lines because we know, you know, how important they are to the economy and to the environment, et cetera. So, again, Maureen, I thought that was just terrific, and thank you for hosting us in this beautiful part of the world. Thanks to all, I think that Lawrence thanked our sponsors, and I'd like to add to that. But most of all, I want to thank all of you in the room. It's the people that make the conference successful. And basically, you know, we have folks from 90 organizations in 15 countries. So, you know, for a first-time effort to bring people together from around the world to talk about these important issues, I think it's a terrific group of people. We also have a lot of CEOs. I just saw a few of them this morning. Marc Boucher of the Hydro-Quebec TransEnergy, Scott Hawkes from Fortis Ontario, Kevin Cosgriff from National Association of Manufacturers, and I'd also like to recognize two of my great friends, Ted Craver, the former CEO of Edison International, and Michael Yakira, the former CEO of Nevada Energy, who are still very, very active in the industry and who are former chairman of EEI and great friends. You know, events like this give us the opportunity to learn so much from each other. And, but most of all, I think they enable us to use in the future the power of partnerships. It's the idea of people coming from around the world to really accomplish a lot with each other and learn from each other. You know, it was, I think was said by Francis, this looks like a little bit like the United Nations. The difference is, and I've had a chance to talk to the United Nations, I know Chairman Liu has as well. The difference is that most of the people you're looking at in the room violently disagree with each other. And I think, you know, as I look around this room, I see, you know, a number of very, very dedicated people that are committed to really move this industry forward, to serve our customers and serve humanity and serve the environment, and that's a very, very exciting thing. So, you know, we have differences in some of our countries, particularly as seen at the United Nations and elsewhere, but we know that we share so much in common, and we know we have so much to gain by coming together and working together. You know, a protege of Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, once said, coming together is the beginning, working together is success, and that's what I think that we have here. We are working together, and Francis talked about the transformation of our industry, and I see it happening worldwide. EEI started our international programs back in 1990 with the idea that we could learn so much from each other. We added the African-American OSPI partnership 3 years ago. The Global Executive Leadership Network just last year, where experts can trade ideas and information with each other. And I see these things really happening so well because what we're seeing in the transformation of our industry, I think is very, very profound. You know, when I came into the business, and probably forever since Thomas Edison founded it, the message was, let's try and provide a product that can move the economy and improve people's lives, that was reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean. That's a mantra I think that I've seen around the world. But really over the last 5 or 6 years, that has changed into a vision. And it's a vision that we really can transform the world. It's a vision that clean energy is absolutely incredibly important, and we're the ones that can provide it. We're the ones that can do it. And it's a vision that says the modernized grid and integrated networks are so important to making that happen. And we're the ones that can make the investment to do that. And that we all have to be much more accountable to customers who are demanding these things. And so our industry is transforming so much into a customer-centric model and really moving forward in a way that I think is really changing the world. So that transformation for me is very exciting, and it really, the model for it is the partnerships that we have with each other. I am so proud of the partnership we have with our Canadian neighbors. You know, we can talk about the $100 billion a year that crosses the borders and that benefits customers on both sides of the borders, the 80 terawatts a year of electricity that's traded, the 4 million barrels a day of oil, and $10 billion CCF of natural gas. These things are just incredibly important. But you know, you really see it play out when you have something like a major hurricane, Hurricane Dorian, and Francis mentioned the situation that in Nova Scotia and the challenges they have with 500,000 customers out. Who would have thought that that hurricane was going to go way up to Nova Scotia? I think we really want to recognize here Carolec and the people of the Bahamas who, and particularly all the people that died there. But you know, just like Puerto Rico, we're going to have the lights back on. We're going to all get together because we have a mutual assistance network that extends from you know, out in the islands to our Canadian neighbors, and they're always the first ones that raise their hand when we have a storm or other emergency to come and assist. So. Again, I think it's an exciting time for our industry. I think it's the most exciting time since Thomas Edison started this business. We have I think Francis talked about the electrification opportunities. That is absolutely essential if we are going to achieve the greenhouse reductions that we need to achieve, that we have to make it happen in the transportation sector, we have to make it happen in the industrial sector, and we can get there. You know, a few years ago, I'm not sure we thought we could actually get there. But we are getting there in the electric industry, and we are getting there and are going to make it happen in the other sectors as well. So again, I think that it's an incredibly exciting time. I think that a transformative time, but I think that we can accelerate the change to a much cleaner economy, and the people around this room are the ones that are going to make it happen. And you know, one of those Edison quotes that I dug up, because I love Edison quotes, I know Steve does as well, is if we really do the things we are capable of doing, we would really truly astound ourselves. I really think the leaders of this industry have astounded themselves over the last 5 or 6 years on the transformation to a cleaner economy. Who would have thought that that this industry could make that fast a transformation? And if anything, that transformation is accelerating. So I think that in the future we will continue to extend ourselves, and I think that's what we're going to talk about here over the next couple of days. So thank you again for having me.
And Tom, a couple of questions, but in your vision of the future, our industry's future, in particular, what's the role of transmission, the central role of transmission? Why is that so important?
Well, I think that, you know, and that's a very, very interesting question because it's one that is often sometimes lost in the debates on climate change. But the idea is that, okay, so we all want to move to a cleaner energy economy, so people always think first about generation. And we have made in our country a transformative change with respect to moving away from some of the older coal plants and replacing them with natural gas. And half of our new generation over the last couple of years has been renewables. And we're relying on those nuclear plants to provide 50% of our carbon-free energy. And we've made major progress, 27% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from the 2005 levels. And we're talking about a commitment to do 50% by 2030, 80% by 2050. And with the R&D that we need to do, we're going to get all the way. And that's very exciting, but it only happens with an integrated network. It can only happen, when you put all those sources together and you deal with the different characteristics of the generation sources, and because you got to be, you've got to ensure reliability, you've got to ensure affordability. So in our country, we're spending $100 billion a year. More than $100 billion a year, and a lot of it is shifted from generation to transmission and to the network, and to technologies that are serving our customers. And I think that that's a mission we all have, quite frankly, to explain to policymakers and others just how important the thing, how important the things that Francis brought up about siting and increasing that network, and to make sure that it all can happen in a reliable fashion. Because when push comes to shove, if electricity is not reliable, we're the ones around this table here that are going to suffer most from that situation.
Do we have a question for Tom from the audience?
Surely some of my friends can ask some nasty ones.
What's the, no, Tom, then I'll get it. Let's follow up on electric transportation. Because it's been poo-pooed, a certain percentage, but what signs do we have that this thing is really taking off in the United States?
I've been one of those long-suffering people that's believed in electric transportation for a long time. I had the first electric vehicle that came out of GM, the EV1, and I got to tell you, it was really a terrible car. Not only did it not get much mileage on electricity, it really had major problems. But at first of a kind of anything, you get that situation. And then I had the Chevy Bolt, much better. We went to a Tesla, and it can be a poor man's car, but I think that I'm on my second Tesla right now, and the range anxiety is going away, and people are buying it not to save the planet. People are buying them because they're great cars. It's one of the fastest cars in the world from 0 to 60, and you ride around on $1.20, the equivalent of $1.20 a gallon. You have practically zero maintenance. And sometimes in an audience like this, I ask people to raise their hand if they have an electric vehicle. I'm not going to embarrass people, but if we do that in this room right now, and some of you may not have any vehicles. If you live in a big city like Vancouver or New York, you might not have any kind of a car at all. But the auto industry now gives me the faith that this is going to happen, because every automobile manufacturer is putting in electric vehicles into their fleets, and in advocating for a movement toward autonomous vehicles, toward electric vehicles. So you are going to see it happen in the future. We now have 1.25 million electric vehicles, pure electric vehicles on the road in the United States, several million overseas. We're going to have by 2030, at least 8 million. We are spending more than $1 billion a year on charging stations. They're coming, so it's happening. And it is the only way you're going to get the carbon reductions you need. Now because we've reduced our carbon emissions, we are no longer the top carbon emitter in our country. It is now transportation by a long shot. And I think that, again, that's going to happen. That's going to continue to accelerate. And then there's all kinds of things in the industrial sector which are going to result in increased electrification.
And now this, I have to admit, this is one of the high points in my career. I'm tremendously honored. I never thought this kid from Brooklyn would introduce one of the globe's great leaders in our industry. So, Liu Zhenya, I got that right? Oh yes, by the way, when he speaks, Lawrence reminds me, go to channel 2 for English translation. Liu is the chairman of the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization, and it is an organization to bring leaders together and bring great research together. I'm particularly fascinated by his work in his career on ultra-high voltage transmission. He is also the chairman of the China Electricity Council. So it makes me think maybe he's the Tom Kuhn of China. Liu, it's such an honor that you've come to North America. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your remarks.
Gentlemen, 大家上午好。2019全球电网论坛聚焦新世纪全球的电网发展、创新投资这个主题，交流思想、分享经验，对于推动世界能源变革、促进人类可持续发展具有十分重要的意义。下面我结合论坛的主题，主要谈2个方面的认识。第一个方面，构建全球能源互联网是实现人类可持续发展的创新之路。当前，全球超过70%的煤炭、石油、天然气主要作为燃料使用，化石能源的大量消耗导致了全球的资源匮乏、环境污染、气候变化、健康、贫困等一系列重大挑战。特别是气候变化日趋严峻，目前各国的减排承诺只能实现巴黎协定目标的1/3。按照这个趋势，到本世纪末，全球的温升将超过30°C，将给人类带来巨大的灾难。2015年9月26日，中国国家主席习近平先生在联合国的发展峰会上提出构建全球能源互联网的重大倡议，为促进世界能源转型和可持续发展提供了中国方案。全球能源互联网是能源生产清洁化、配置广域化、消费电气化的现代能源体系，是清洁能源在全球范围大规模开发、输送和使用的重要平台。它实质上就是智能电网加特高压电网加清洁能源。也就是说，智能电网是基础，特高压电网是关键，清洁能源是根本。构建全球能源互联网将加快推动2个替代、1个提高、1个回归、1个转化。所谓2个替代，即能源的开发实施清洁替代，以水能、太阳能、风能等清洁能源替代化石能源发电；能源消费实施电能替代，一电带煤、一电带油、一电带气、一电带柴，用的是清洁发电。1个提高，即提高全社会的电气化水平。目前全球电终端能源消费的比重仅为19%，如果每提高1个百分点，每年将减少全球的用能7.2亿吨标煤，相当于2017年加拿大和墨西哥一次能源消费的总和。 一个回归，即化石能源回归为其基本属性，主要作为工业原材料使用，为经济社会发展创造更大的价值。原油作为原材料，它所创造的经济价值是用作燃料的1.6倍。一个转化，即通过电将二氧化碳、水等转化为氢气、甲烷、甲醇等燃料和原材料，破解资源的困局，满足人类永续发展的需求。构建全球能源互联网，总体可按照国内互联、洲内互联、全球互联3个阶段推进。2025年全面加强各国国内的电网互联，跨国联网实现重要突破。2035年基本实现各大洲内的电网互联，亚欧非率先实现跨洲联网，亚洲、欧洲、非洲率先实现。2050年建成亚欧非和美洲主要联网通道，在此基础上建设北极能源通道，形成全球能源格局。北美洲能源互联网是全球能源互联网的重要组成部分。目前，北美洲的人口约占全球人口的6.5%，但每年能源消费排放的二氧化碳达到了全球的18%。工业革命以来，累计碳排放占到全球的比重达到了30%。在应对气候变化中，肩负着重要的责任和义务。构建北美洲能源互联网是加快北美洲能源转型、应对气候变化的必然要求。重点是开发太阳能发电、风电、水电等清洁能源，全面加强重点通道、骨干网架的建设和跨洲联网，在北美洲形成北电南送、西电东送、水风光互补、跨洲互济的总体格局，保障能源安全、经济、清洁、永续供应。依托大容量的光纤等通讯技术，信息网实现了从局域网、光域网到全球互联网的升级。目前，全球通过了250多条海底光缆，天上有700多颗通信卫星。总之，这些技术实现了信息互联互通，深刻地改变了人们生产、生活和交往的方式。与信息网相比，能源网的互联明显滞后。其实跨行业大家是比较生疏的。这在信息通讯行业有个国际海底电缆俱乐部，其全球200多条海底大容量的光缆，可以分别建，可以合资建，可以买股份，都已经成为现实，可以在不同国家登陆接网。而在电力行业看来就是天大的困难，其实是个思想观念问题，是个技术创新问题，是个技术创新问题。随着陶戈亚技术的突破，能源配置的范围由小到大，配置能力由弱到强，配置的效率由低到高。全球能源互联网一定能够建成，在推动能源转型和人类的可持续发展中将会发挥关键的作用。很多把当前的现象都习以为常了，比如将亚洲生产的新贸服装可以到加拿大、美国来销售，大家觉得很正常。那为什么亚洲的电力和北美洲的电力不能互联互通呢？如果成为现实，你就没有问号了。这就在现在需要革新创新的这么一个阶段。一是推动清洁发展，到2050年，全球清洁能源占一次能源的比重将达到70%以上，清洁能源发电装机将增加至220亿千瓦，占全球总装机的比重达到83%。也就是说，到2050年，全球的发电装机将会达到260亿到270亿千瓦。全球的用电量将超过60万亿千瓦时，每年这样 将减少电费支出1.8万亿美元，将根本上解决全球污电人口的问题，实现人人享有可持续的能源。二是保护生态环境，到2050年，全球每年减少二氧化硫、氮氧化物、可吸入的颗粒物排放物6.3亿吨，大气、淡水、海洋、土地等生态系统得到有效的保护。全球碳排放2025年前可以达峰，2050年将降至上世纪90年代初的1半以下，2065年前达到净零排放，为实现巴黎协定的2度乃至1.5度的目标发挥十分关键的作用。全球能源互联网是一套系统，越不仅仅是电网，它涉及到清洁能源的生产。
Energy system. It's not just about power grids. We're talking about the total energy generations and energy efficiency for the whole world. Third, GEI could boost economic prosperity by the year 2050. A total of $38 trillion US dollars will be invested in GEI, including $27 trillion in power generation side and $11 trillion in grid, thus driving technology innovations, industrial development in fields of new energy, new materials, artificial intelligence, big data, and electric vehicles, and forging new engines for the economic growth. Fourth, it will help achieve win-win development through cooperation. It will give full play to complementarities of development and developing countries in terms of technology sharing, market and resource sharing, facilitate South-North, South-South cooperation, and boost the mutual trust among countries, establishing a new energy governance pattern that is mutually beneficial and make the world a better place for.
而清洁能源是取之不尽、用之不竭的，这些敏感性大大的降低啊！下面我发言第二个方面，携手推动全球能源互联网的创新发展。目前构建全球能源互联网的条件已经具备，一是资源丰富，全球清洁能源开发的潜力将超过100万亿千瓦。仅开发5%就可以满足人类的需求。太阳照射地球1小时时候产生的能量，超过全球1年的能源需求量。开发撒哈拉沙漠7.7%的国土面积的太阳能，就可以满足未来全球的电力需求。二，技术可行，陶戈亚技术先进成熟。清洁能源发电不断进步，智能电网技术广泛应用。比如在中国已经建成10角14支24个陶戈亚工程，在建4角4支
as 24 ultra high voltage AC and DC projects undergoing, and now we have 10 AC and 14 ultra high voltage DC grids has put into operation. That means in China, the power plants in every places can be sent to every part and every corner of the territory. And for example, the plus minus 1,100 kV ultra high voltage DC lines can transmit powers through a 6,000 kilometers distance, and transmission capacity can reach to 12 to 15 gigawatts, and annual transmission can reach to 80 to 100 terawatts of electricity. And that's why we say the ultra-high voltage is very important for us to realize the global energy interconnections, because it's large capacity, long transmission distance, and low line loss. And actually, this technology is developed in China is because the Soviet Union and Japan has done the engineering practice and experiments. And due to economic reasons, on other technical issues, and their trial have ended into failure. But in China, we have achieved the full success, and it's been practiced all over the world. And actually, the ultra-high voltage power technology in China has been successfully applied to Brazil with double circuit plus minus 800 kV ultra-high voltage DC lines, which emerges a large energy corridor for outbound hydropower transmission from the Amazon River. Third, is this economic competitive. Emerging technology and extensive development of the clean energy brought down the cost of the clean energy. Actually, the clean energy generation cost, for example, the bidding price of PV projects in Portugal and Brazil, that of the wind projects in Mexico have been reduced to below 1.8 US cents per kilowatt hour. It is estimated that the competitiveness of PV and onshore wind power will overwhelmingly surpass that of the fossil fuels before 2025. Fourth, it is supported by the international consensus. A total of 26 member states of the European Union have pledged to stop building new coal-fired power plants after the year 2020. Norway, UK, and France have announced timelines for stopping selling petrol and diesel cars. The building GIs has been incorporated into the framework for implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda, Paris Agreement, and global environmental protection. This means that expediting the development of clean energy and grid interconnection and the leveling up electrification have become international concerns. We can say that each country, and with the support of the United Nations, and we have been provided and offered many political solutions for us to combat climate change. For example, Kyoto Protocols and the Paris Agreement. And these solutions are based on the political and social level. But in the technology and engineering side, we think the GEI can become a real measure that is not only countable and reliable and expandable ways for us to build engineering practice to combat climate change. And we think it's a measurable and accountable measure. And when we talk about sustainable development, we're talking about the resource constraint, environmental pollution, climate change, and health and poverty issues, and how to solve that. I think the essence is that we should develop the clean energy. And actually, the clean development equal to sustainable development. And with the GEI being built, we can actually solve the global sustainable development issues, solve the world clean development issues. That is my concept to talk about. Actually, the construction of GEI calls for joint efforts from all parties concerned, and priorities should be given to 4 innovations. First of all, efforts should be made to enable innovations of development concepts. Development paths of fossil dominance should be shifted to clean dominance. The traditional security view that competes for possession of fossil reserves should be shifted to a new clean world that focuses on sharing and cooperation. The development model seeking local power balance should be shifted to more pioneering concepts which advocates large-scale optimal energy allocation. The traditional interconnection model of hand-in-hand power exchange in small capacity should be upgraded by a new principle that promoting ultra-high voltage interconnection, or we call heart-to-heart large-capacity power transmission over long distance, to usher a new chapter of energy and power development. And for us who endeavored to the engineering and electrical field, we're talking about the power transmission exchanges around borders. It's really for us like tasting coffees and tasting teas. This small capacity of power exchange cannot solve a problem. And actually, why we are endorse the concept of the heart-to-heart power transmission, that we should develop a power transmission directly from the power base, generation base, to the load centers. That is based on our new concepts, new strategy. Then we can realize this kind of power transmission directly from the load center to the power generation basis. And this can be done by the ultra-high voltage technology. That's why I have mentioned earlier before the plus minus 1,100 kV UHV DC lines. We can transmit directly from the China West to Berlin, Germany. Because if we know that the electricity travels speed of light, and actually the China and United States and America shares a time difference about 12 to 13 hours, and China to Europe, the time difference is 6 to 7 hours. So actually, when we are in working time in China, maybe we're now in a sleeping time in other parts of the world. So actually, we can allocate the energy resources simultaneously. And therefore, we can take the full advantage of the time zone difference, seasonal difference, time zone difference, and the power tariff price differences. We're now very familiar with the global commodity trade, like for clothes, toys, shoes, and in the future, and the electricity will become the main carrier of the global energy trade. So that's why I think for us who are endorsed in the power business, we are taking a very huge responsibilities for the future of the mankind. And second, efforts should be made to stimulate major innovations in technology and equipment. We should secure breakthroughs in advanced technology and equipment, including ultra-high voltage large capacity submarine cables, VSC HVDC power transmission, and superconducting transmission, and enhance the resource allocation capacity and grid efficiency. We should speed up the development of new technology like smart control of the large interconnected grids, large capacity virtual synchronous generators, chemical energy storage and hydrogen storage, and coordinator of power generation grid load storage, ensuring grids can better and more flexibility adapt to integration of clean energy at a high rate and oversee the safe operation of grids. We should accelerate the development of technologies for smart grid, smart cities, smart homes, electricity vehicles, and demand-side response to raise efficiency of end-use energy use. We know that the manufacturing of the plus-minus 800 kV submarine ultra-high voltage DC cables is totally feasible from the manufacturing side. If we can build a transmission submarine cables between through the Mediterranean Sea to connect Africa and Europe, actually this can be done. And if you're talking about the same transmission lines, the oil and natural gas industries already achieved such kind of transmission between the continents. And we know the pipelines and the oil pipelines have already achieved the same kind of energy transportations. And why can't the power grids achieve the same pattern? And third, efforts should be made to innovate business models. Global energy interconnection could coordinate and leverage difference in resources, time zones, seasons, and electricity tariffs among different countries and regions to generate substantial economic benefits. We should bring this advantage into full play, tap into commercial value of the project, promote market-oriented operation, and establish the global investment and financing platforms. And actually, the construction of the GEI is mainly relied on the commercial operations and bring huge commercial opportunities for all of us. And also, we should providing the more and more commercial models and business models, for example, the carbon trade, and to build a flexible carbon electricity hybrid markets. And we should coordinate the carbon and the electricity markets together. And now we have separate markets, not only in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. But we think the GuideCo is putting efforts into the research that building a hybrid markets to combine electricity and carbon. And this research report will be released in COP25 this year. And actually, we want to achieve an interlink between the carbon and electricity market to realize the synergy and the coordinated development between those two markets. And we have to conduct in-depth research on the structure, trading mechanisms, and operation rules of global electricity carbon market and promotes a roadmap for construction of a global electricity carbon market, providing a market solution that features coordinated governance in response to climate change and sustainable energy development. I'd like to talk about a little bit more about our work. Actually, apart from the carbon electricity carbon market, we can also do the global energy outlooks. For example, we have promote and produced research report on the global backbone grid, the European, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, European energy interconnection planning reports. And now we are releasing the North American energy planning reports at this forum this afternoon. And actually, by the end of this year, we're going to have the 4 energy planning reports covering all parts of the world, including each continent and major regions. And next year, we're going to release the research reports on the clean energy potentials and investment suggestions. And all these 2 series of reports will help the world to facilitate the clean development and energy transitions. Ladies and gentlemen, GETCO is dedicated to promoting the sustainable development of the world. We have over 700 members from more than 100 countries across 5 continents. We have published the GEI Backbone Grid Research Report, the GEI Development Index, GEI Technology and Equipment Innovation Outline, and the GEI Research Reports specific to regional energy interconnection. And GETCO will release the research reports on North America region in this afternoon. And your attention and suggestion would be very much appreciated. The construction of GEI is an ambitious undertaking that benefits us all. Let's join hands to speed up the development of GEI and make greater contributions to a brighter future of mankind. I think the up level of socio-economic development for the whole world is the integration of global energy network, global information network, global transportation network, which we call the EITI. And to combine the electricity flow, information flow, data flow, and the flow of things together. This combination will becoming a higher level and a brighter future for us to look ahead. And we have done many researches regarding to that. I'd like to take this opportunity to share my thoughts. I'd like to hear your comments and suggestions. Thank you very much.
Well, Zhenya, so that's a very exciting, the global interconnection is a very, exciting vision. And I wanted to ask first, what makes you optimistic that all the nations will be able to achieve this vision? What makes you optimistic that we will have global integration?
这个问题啊，很重大，回答起来也很光荣。简单的回答就是使命和创新。使命怎么讲呢？就是全人类在发展当中遇到了重大挑战。刚才我讲到的资源匮乏、环境污染、气候变化。
Like I said earlier before, the resource constraint, the climate change,
全人类每一个人
and poverty and health issues affecting us all kinds of people, every nation, every resident living on this earth. So I take these responsibilities and duties to take this mission. And secondly, I'll talk about is about technology innovations, especially the ultra-high voltage technology, the transmission technology innovations. Like I said before, the information network has been formed in the past 4 decades, from the local area network to wide area network and to a global area network. And we have formed an information network, a global internet. And its history actually inspires. It's actually the duties and technology innovations inspires us. It's because of technology in communications that has been rapid increase over the past years, like the communication satellites, like the last optical fibers. And in the past, we were talking about power transmissions. We were talking about transmission in a couple hundreds kilometers with a couple gigawatts of transmission capacity. But with the new technologies of travel transmissions, we can transmit powers over a couple thousand kilometers or 10,000 kilometers away. So transmission capacity can reach to couple dozens of gigawatts, and we can actually control the low-lying loss to 5% to 6%. So therefore, I like to say that the technology innovations, not only the transmission side, but also the generation side, the clean energy generation side, for example, has been declined in its cost dramatically over the past decades. So in the future, when we're talking about the clean energy, not because it's clean, but also because it's very cheap to use. Actually, the commercial benefits will overpass the political concerns in the future, because it will bring benefits to all mankind, to every nation. That's why I say the technology innovations is very important. And the GEI, for example, has already conquered all kinds of technology which will be involved. For example, the transmission side, the market side. And now the major problem for us is to conquer the barriers between our minds. Actually, we're forbidden ourselves from keeping forward, to think beyond. And for us who endeavored in this business, for the leadership in these areas, should sit together to communicate, to share our thoughts. And that's why I see the difference between the power business even in different continents and different countries.
And maybe we have time for just one more question. Gentleman over here.
Saifur Rahman, IEEE PES. Very interesting presentation. Chairman Liu talked about the 1000 kV ultra high voltage AC plus 800 kV DC, which is very good. As we expand this idea globally, especially Africa and Asian countries, China has built its own manpower to build these lines. How would you help other countries to build their own manpower so they can build these lines themselves?
Actually, this technology has achieved a full development and been applied and already formed standards in IEC and IEEE. Regarding to the capacity building, in theory, we should cultivate participants, engagers in these areas, and we'd like to share our experience, share our technology, and that's not a barrier between us. Actually, we're taking no technical barriers to upgrade the power grid level from 220 kV to 1000 kV ultra high voltage lines. We can actually communicate each other in a very convenient ways.
And we're going to take one more question from one of the great leaders of our U.S. industry of the last 20 years, Ted Craver. And you have the last question.
With that buildup, I don't know what to do. Chairman, thank you very much for coming to this forum and participating with us. In one of your slides, you showed a phrase, new governance model, for managing this GEI system, global system, interconnected system. Would you be able to expand a little bit for the group what that new governance model would look like and how it would operate?
I'd like to say, first of all, the global energy network is actually built based on the domestic interconnection and intracontinental interconnections. That is why when we making these research proposals, By the year 2025, each nation should build their own domestic interconnections. And by the year 2035, we can achieve intra-continental interconnections inside of the continent. And the year 2050, we can achieve the third stage. We can achieve a primary interconnections between the continents. And actually, in reality, we can achieve this work much further, much earlier. For example, the Euro-Asia-Africa power interconnections. We can see many MOUs agreements has been signed between the countries and nations. Also, like to mention about the electricity market. Each nation should have its own power pools. And each countries between each other can also share their electricity market to have exchanges between their own domestic markets. And we have some regulations and policies to be established in the future. And all this research will be included in our GETCO research reports regarding to how to build this global energy governance pattern and business models.
Thank you. And finally, we're going to move to Mohamed Rashwan. Dr. Rashwan is, now this is very impressive, he's the chairman of the SIGRE Study Committee on DC and Power Electronics. Wow, you must be really smart.
Not really. Thank you. Excuse me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for my voice, too many speeches. And certainly my pleasure to participate in the forum on behalf of SIGRE. Just quickly to give you an idea what SIGRE is about. SIGRE is an international organization. We are represented in over 100 countries. Obviously, we are a non-profit organization, and we have over 10,000 members worldwide. So when we talk about the United Nations, which as close as you can get to the United Nations. SIGRE does its work in 16 study committees, which B4, the one I chair, is one of them. And there are 230 working groups with almost about 3,600 technical experts worldwide. So the work is done on unbiased basis, no boundaries. People come to the working group to produce the documents that are used by, we don't produce standards. IEC produces standards. We don't, okay? Although our recommendations go to IEC and they produce standards out of it. So that's briefly about SIGRE, and of course Canada is one of the national committees, the US is one of the national committees, and so on, okay? Okay, the future, I think that was mentioned earlier. Why are the changes in our industry? There are 5 Ds and 1 EM gives us the future direction, okay? And engineers like equations, so that's what it is. So, the 5 Ds are diversified energy. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Diversified energy sources, it's happening, which distributed energy, also resources, decarbonized world, democratization, which I never really, when I heard it the first time, I couldn't figure it out, but we'll see why. And of course, digitization. I think it was mentioned before that diversified energy sources is clear. We have the hydro and still some thermal, but really also there is the wind, there is the solar, etc., etc. So it makes sense. There is no doubt about it, okay? Distributed energy resources, again, it used to be, let's say in many examples, the energy sources were centralized and we transmitted it. But now we have energy sources that are actually distributed, okay? Which means new technologies are needed, like, for example, basically storage and so on, okay? I'm not going to dwell on that because I want to get to the technology, okay? Decarbonization, again, it has been talked about, and certainly the electric industry, as has been mentioned, is one of the best because they're addressing that. It's the transportation part. But so really, we are in a world that we are trying to achieve decarbonization. Democratization, and that's the one that was interesting when I heard it for the first time. Democratization meaning in the electric business, people are demanding electricity. There is no doubt about it. As people more have say in the way they obtain their power, their energy, that means we have to meet that. And that's what's happening. Also, in many parts of this world, where there was no electricity, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, in part of Asia, we actually, now people are demanding electricity. So obviously that puts a demand on the network. And that is very important. And actually in SIGRI, we have just signed a memorandum with the World Bank to actually, for that particular implementation for electricity in sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. Digitization, which is obvious, and right away, most of the electric network is now computer controlled, obviously. Controls are all digital, which means also there is the risk for cyber attacks, and as the network extends, so definitely that has an impact on our industry, okay? I'm glad actually before I go to that, the electric mobility. We talked about that, electric vehicles, and I'm not saying, I definitely agree on what was said about electric vehicles, but electric mobility is more than electric vehicles. There is transportation by trains. There is actually trucking. I mean, we haven't addressed that. Sure, I mean, the people like you and me will buy Teslas and so on. And by the way, I have an order for Tesla. So having said that, I think the bigger question will be the big transportation, okay? The trucking industry, okay? We have to solve that problem. There's no doubt about it, okay? And obviously in Europe, the electric trains, and maybe in other parts of the world, we will probably have to get to that stage too, okay, from that. So that addresses the electric mobility. Okay, I'm glad I'm speaking after Mr. Liu, because he talked about DC, and DC is one of my favorite topics, okay? So, well, there is no doubt about it, the future of the transmission and even of the distribution system is in DC. It's a fact, and I'll tell you just a simple example. To integrate wind offshore, okay? There is no other solution but DC transmission, because you have these generators sitting hundreds of kilometers away from the shore. There's a cable. It cannot be an AC cable. It has to be a DC cable. And once you get a DC cable, that means it's DC transmission. So there is no doubt about it, okay? DC, and that's why suddenly there is this big, I call it actually in the study committee, DC is the flavor of the century, So as far as I'm concerned, DC is the future of the transmission, okay? I'm not saying AC will disappear, don't get me wrong, but for all this integration of renewables, okay, solar, for all these kind of distances, and especially transmission lines are getting harder and harder to build, okay? So obviously people will go to cables. It is at a cost, but if that's the answer, it will be DC. Right away, once we have DC, we will get DC grids. And that is something new. And a DC grid is different from an AC grid, and we are working in SIGRI on many aspects of the DC grid. For example, once you have a DC grid, you have to treat it like an AC grid. That means you need DC breakers, okay? And we have actually many suppliers have demonstrated DC breakers, and you have to also be able to clear the fault in a DC grid, similar to an AC grid, meaning you cannot just shut the whole system. You know what I mean? So that is coming for sure. We're going to expand from the high voltage DC to the medium voltage and to the low voltage DC. Okay. Mr. Liu touched on UHV. There is no doubt about it, especially for the hydro resources that are situated, and even we have it in Canada, that are situated far from the load centers. Okay. The economics, and even that, the economics definitely goes towards the DC transmission. In many parts of the world, that is the case. China is one, India is another one, Brazil is another one, and of course 800 kV DC right now is pretty standard technology. It's not anything new. There are so many systems operating at 800 kV DC, and there is one system in China that's under testing at 1100 kV DC, 10,000 megawatts on one transmission line. Okay. And in SIGRI, we have done all the work. In fact, I remember chairing a working group in 2002 on DC at extra high voltage, which is 800 kV. And at the time, we just set the concept. There was no 800 kV at the time, but now there are so many of them. And what SIGRI said is that we do, yes, it can be done. Obviously, it can be done. And it is done now. Global interconnections. Well, first of all, interconnections have been with us. Let's be straight about this. Well, we have many utilities in Canada are connected to the US and connected to each other. So interconnections, and in Europe is the same. Like you have Germany connected to Netherlands, you've got UK connected to the continent. So interconnections are around, okay? We have in Canada, Hydro-Quebec is connected to the south, and Manitoba Hydro is connected also to the south, BC Hydro is the same, etc., okay? But what we're talking about here is what Mr. Liu alluded to, which is global interconnections, okay? Global interconnections are a different situations, because now you need, for example, and I'm going to take an example, we need to go, let's say, from China, I'm going to take an example, to North America, okay, or to Europe, okay? We definitely, that's where DC will come into the picture, because you're going by cables, and obviously cables are the only way to go, and the only way is DC, okay? In SIGRE, we actually study committee C1, which is system planning, has and completed a working group C135 that looked at global interconnections. And actually, this is a planning group. They came up with the answer, yes, it can be done. When they gave us the task, okay, can it be done now physically? Can we make equipment? We have a cable, okay, you just think about it. You have a cable that is in the range of 10,000 kilometers, okay? Sure, that's now becomes a cable issue, for sure. And we need to go up with the voltage for the losses, okay? So that's a cable point of view. But also, we look at it from a losses point of view. And I'm not saying it cannot be done, but we need to come up with new ideas how to compensate for the losses on that circuit, okay? And we actually, right now, have doing work on that, on this particular. So what I'm saying is, global interconnections, yes, it can be done, okay? But there is a lot of work to be done ahead of it, okay? The other point of view is cybersecurity. You start connecting for that length, okay? And involving a lot of countries, okay? The system has to be secure, okay? No attacks, whether it's physical on the circuit or even digitally, okay? With that, I would like to close it. I mean, I can talk forever about DC, but I don't want to bore you, okay? Thank you so much.
How about, we're over, but how about a question from the audience? Does someone? We're all DC fans. Yes, here's a good DC fan.
My name's Peter Meissen. I'm with the Global Energy Network Institute out of San Diego. And I'm thrilled with this panel because I see both the problem and the solution sitting right in front of us. With BC, hydro, almost entirely renewable. Some of my cheapest power in San Diego comes from you, 1,000 miles away down an AC and a DC link. But also we have the two biggest utility representatives with Mr. Liu and Mr. Kuhn on the panel here. The U.S. used to be the largest CO2 producer on the planet. About 10 years ago, China surpassed that, and the U.S. and China are now half of the world's CO2 emissions. Those two countries. So we have said the only way you solve this problem is if the U.S. and China solve it together. So I'm thrilled that you're sitting next to one another. You've spoken what the solutions are. I just wonder how you get to 80% CO2 reduction by 2050. It's a radical transition, and it can only be done with U.S. and China leadership.
Well, it's a great question. And I think that, basically the numbers that we're talking about, and when you talk to, the regular person that, may be paying attention to this but not, totally seriously, they're probably more interested in the 2030 number of 50% by 2030. But again, I think as the climate debate heats up, so to speak, you are going to definitely be focused more on the 80% number by 2050. And you have a situation where it encompasses a lot of, investments in the grid and low carbon, zero carbon technologies. But it also includes in that transition some natural gas. But you're going to have to be working also on carbon capture, utilization, or storage of natural gas. Beyond the 80%, though, where people want to go to zero carbon or carbon neutral, it really, in my opinion, is going to require some R&D that, and some new technologies, but certainly in that time frame we think they're going to be there. And again, a total focus on the rest of the economy, and particularly electrification of vehicles and industrial sectors. So it's a vision, but I don't think it's a wild vision. I think it's something that really can be done. And again, you're seeing the CEOs in our industry very, very much committed to getting there.
这个根据技术发展情况和规划研究情况来看，到2050年是可以做得到碳排放下降到80%，也就是说到2050年的时候，碳排放回到上世纪90年代初的一半水平，把温度控制在2度甚至1.5度以内，另外到2065年到70年的时候，可以做到碳的净零排放。这个作为技术和规划研究都已经有了。这个下一步实际就是一个怎么操作、怎么实践的问题。当然，这个会和一个国家的政策、政治政策等都有关系，尽管情况差异比较大，我想大概清洁化发展的这种大洪流、大趋势是不可阻挡的，我相信经过大家的共同努力，能够成功，当然会有不少困难。
Well, that was an amazing panel. Thank you. Thank you to the panel.
Well, let me Thank you, Steve, for doing this and kicking us off with this moderation. And I think it stirred up a lot of ideas, and I'm sure we're going to have a very good 1.5 day of conversation and dialogue here today. Thanks again to the panelists, and thanks to Steve. We're going to take a break. One of the things we like to emphasize at these events is that networking is very important, and having that break is important. So we're going to take a break and return at 11:20. So we'll start the next session a little later, but we'll catch up. So let's take the break, and we'll see you here at 11:20. Thank you.